Hello, Blenders, and welcome to another very special bonus episode of the ReelBlend podcast. A podcast that is still down 2 soldiers. And we look like we're in the same clothes in the exact same places because, yes, we just finished recording Wednesday.
It almost feels like we are.
It's pretty magical movie making over here. We're just doing our part of movie magic over here. But it's myself, your producer, Gabe Kovac, filling in for Sean, who is still under the weather. It's mere minutes away from the last time you heard from me.
Yeah, he's still got even 5. He was sick 5 minutes ago. How long is he going to milk this cow?
But with me is, of course, Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Jake, I know how you're doing because we've been hanging out for about an hour now, but how you doing?
Doing great, baby. You know what? We always joke that Gabe and I are usually the first 2 to log on before we start recording, and we call it the show before the show. But now it's the show.
It's the show.
It's just the show.
Maybe we should start selling this show on the premium. Just the show before the show. Maybe we should start our own thing. They're not here. Let's break away.
In 6 years, when it's just you and me, we go, remember that time when we used to have 2 other people on the show?
Yeah, but they have their own show and it's bigger and we're just upset. Yeah.
Yeah. And then before that, when we were an awards podcast.
Yeah, and then we have to say that every time. Yes, so if you somehow didn't tune in to the episode that dropped on Wednesday.
What are you doing?
Sir Ridley Scott returned to the show. Go check it out. Stop what you're doing right now. Go listen to that. Come join us. You'll get much more context than we're about to give you. But yes,
we said a lot of things we're not going to say again.
This is true. Sean is under the weather. We wish him well. He did try to be here. He's a trooper. But hopefully by the time you're hearing this, he's right as rain. Send him love on socials. Kevin is traveling. It's a holiday week, so travel, sickness, tight little window to fit stuff in so that people can enjoy their families. What a novel thing. So thank you to Jake for joining me. And today's
it would have been a little awkward to have you host the show about the junket that you weren't able to go to.
Yeah, I was like, what am I just gonna be like? Hey guys, I might have just published the interviews. We should be like, you know what? They need no introduction. No, yeah. So we already discussed Ridley. Like I said, go back and check that out. I will quickly go through our housekeeping. We are, of course, the ReelBlend podcast, available wherever you get your fine podcasts, including YouTube. So if you're listening to us and you want to see what we look like, feel free at youtube.com/ReelBlend podcast. And if you want to get the show ad-free on those audio players, you can check the description for our premium subscription feed. You'll get the show ad-free, and you'll get a bi-weekly newsletter from one Sean O'Connell. That's the rigmarole. Jake, I know you're doing well. We have Joaquin Phoenix here today. Is there anything you want to tell the folks before they jump into this interview?
Well, you said it perfectly in the last episode. I'm just going to kind of rehash that, which is that our very first time we had Joaquin on the show, we were nervous. I think to a certain degree, obviously differently, and for different reasons. He was nervous. He's walking into a room with 3 guys with microphones, 4 guys. You were there too. 4 guys with microphones.
Just a table in a hotel room.
And he didn't really know what our vibe was, what kind of questions we were going to ask. And by the end of that half hour, I'd like to say that he was very happy with how it all turned out. And we famously tell the story where he walked out of the room, ran into Todd Phillips and said, "Dude, you got to do their show. They're great." So I feel like we earned a certain degree of trust with him and his team. And whenever we sort of reminded when the actor strike ended and we found out that Joaquin was going to be doing some but very, very, very little press for Napoleon, obviously we threw our hat in the ring. Never really thought much would come of it other than to say, listen, if this helps our case at all, he's been on the show before and we're pretty sure he had a great time. And it really wasn't that long. Gabe, you would probably know better. It wasn't that long before we got okay, you guys are in.
It felt super quickly. Yeah, that was all kind of a rush. Once it ended, but it felt like it was the same week. I think it ended on a Thursday. We might have known by Friday or that weekend. That he was getting added. So
and he was our first interview of the day. We got there and we're kind of very quickly sort of thrown into it. He was in the room waiting for us when we got there, and instantly, it was so funny. I was telling the guys after, just the way he greeted us and shook our hands was almost, it was so night and day compared to that first time that it felt very much like we picked right up where we left off in the last one, in the sense that we worked so hard in that first interview to get him to a place of comfort and a place of respect and letting him know these are the types of questions we ask. We're not the sort of podcast that is going to come after you in any way. All we want to do is appreciate movies the same way you do. And he left on a really good note. And it almost felt like he walked out and walked right back in because he was instantly shaking our hands, looking us in the eyes. Hey, man, guys, come on in. Sit down. And, it was so comfortable that, and I'm not sure how much of the audio we're going to use in this, but like, we were all kind of just shooting the shit.
Oh, yeah, we're going to
before
use
we
that.
turned around and realized, wait, are we rolling? And he even said, I thought this is just sort of what the interview was going to be. Like, that's sort of how comfortable it was that we probably lost 5 minutes of the interview, if I'm being honest. Just because we were all just sort of shooting the shit about hanging out and Ridley Scott and it's Chuck Taylor's and being in Paris. And you don't get that with someone who doesn't want to do your podcast or who doesn't want to be there. And I honestly do think, question for question, answer for answer, that it's a better interview than we got for Joker. There are so many aspects about Joker that were flashier just because we weren't expecting to get him and we weren't expecting it to go as well as it did and we weren't expecting it to transition the way that it did. But honestly, I just think the substance of this interview is genuinely better than the Joker interview.
I can second that. I think it is a fantastic interview that we're about to throw to. There's not much more I can do to hype it up. So I will go ahead and let the folks check out the return of Joaquin Phoenix on the podcast. And I'll let the boys in France in the past take it away.
I think we're okay.
We're good.
You
We're
all look so sharp.
just happy to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, I don't know if you know this, but it's a podcast. It's a video. What's up?
We got dressed up for you, man. Yeah, we knew you were
Why
gonna
are you making me feel like this?
We got to talk to Sir Ridley after
be on
this.
camera. Yeah.
Oh, really?
He's
Yeah.
making us dress up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
We'd much rather be like in casual clothes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he has an eye, and he will say like that's not appropriate.
Exactly. Exactly. We don't want to earn his scorn.
I both do and don't want to be called out by Ridley Scott.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It can be fun.
Yeah. Dude's 86 years old. It's unbelievable.
Doesn't look it.
Yeah.
No, he does not.
No,
It's-
not in the least bit.
No.
Just like watching this movie last night, there's a part of me that just goes like,
How?
it just like the idea of directing something like this. I'm 35. At 35, exhaust me, much less him in his 80s is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Are we
and
rolling?
you wouldn't
Oh, we're
know.
rolling. Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Okay, let's go.
That's right. This is how we
I thought you guys. I was like, this is very smooth how they just transition right in. I said, wow, I thought it was gonna be an official stuff, but no, they just cruise right
Jump
in.
right into it.
impressive.
Joaquin, first of all, dude, thank you for coming back to the show, man. We appreciate your time. I'm going to jump into this. Ridley told a great story a while back.
It's not
that-
true.
Well,
I just know it's not true.
I'm curious to see. You can correct him. He said about 2 weeks before you guys started filming that you approached him and said, I haven't figured out how I'm going to crack this character.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe I did, but I know. I don't know if I did 2 weeks before. I know that I probably said that every day leading up to filming from 3 months in advance, and probably continued throughout production. So I don't remember specifically like 2 weeks before. Remember we dug in earnest into the screenplay, I think 3 months in advance. But I don't remember that precise moment, but it's a great story.
Well, the
and
reason
it's traveled well.
The reason I was curious is I'm just sort of curious is like usually how long before you guys hear action for the first time have you got the character figure? Are you still figuring it out even in
I
those first
never
couple of
do.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't even know what that means.
Figuring it out?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, there maybe are, it might mean I'm just a bad actor, but I'll accept that. I feel like there are some actors that maybe do have everything figured out in advance. I think maybe it's my nature, maybe it's a product of some of the characters that I've played. I'm not really sure. And certainly as I've gotten older, I'm more comfortable with through going through a process in which it reveals itself to me more, and not having to have those answers. Because I think in the past, what I found was I made decisions and I was forceful and stuck to them in a way that I didn't think really worked for me and for like a creative process. It felt too rigid. I think there's, conversely, you can be lazy and not do the work and find yourself in a situation where you don't have any answers. I think I like to have several possibilities of where I could go with a scene. and not really decide in advance because some of it's just practical, right? You have a script and you imagine what the interior of a room may be and what the other actors are, how they're going to perform their part, and then you get there and everything's fucking different, you know. And so that just feels like, okay, well, let me just have a few different options of how this could go, and then I usually, I don't know, I hope I don't even make a decision. Sometimes when I make a decision in a scene, and there are times where I've gone like, oh, okay, wait a minute, I think I cracked this. I figured this out. Then I go, that's pretty fucking good. You're pretty smart. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then it's always terrible. Like I try it really without fail. And I think the only time things work for me are when it guides me. I know that seems like not a satisfactory response, but it's really true.
It leads me right into what I wanted to get into next, because one of the aspects about Napoleon that I did not expect at all and loved was his playfulness in this movie, and some of the decisions you make to just sometimes make goofy noises as you're doing it. And I love when you go underneath the table and crawl towards Vanessa. So good. That can't be something that you learned about him in your research. Is that a choice that you made? Is it really?
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing I was really surprised by. I guess I didn't know much about him, but I think you assume that he's cold and calculating. And what I discovered was he was a prankster, and he was very immature. He's really like a teenager. I think it's Arrested Development in some ways, right? He was really advanced with some things, right? He excelled at mathematics, but he was very socially awkward. He didn't know how to talk to women. And I think, one of the things that he says when he first met Josephine, she didn't mock him, which I think a lot of women had. And she asked him questions about his military campaigns and seemed to be genuinely impressed with what he'd achieved. And he was so shocked that a woman had interest in him that he just like instantly fell in love. And I think there was some, the implication was that he lost his virginity to a prostitute well in advanced age. So he kind of like, he was basically just like the first girl that was like, hey, you seem cool. He was like, I love you.
We've all been there. Right? We've all experienced that.
But so there was this side of him that was just very, very playful and used to joke around all the time. And he didn't understand that you shouldn't stand very close to people or pinch their ears or cheeks really hard. Right. So he was just always playing around. And I was really surprised by that. So we try to get that in as much as possible. And, that scene was at the dinner table or the breakfast table was just kind of, it was like just an expository scene, just like with information. And then it seemed like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity just to show that he just is like just a ruffian and he was just going to climb under the table.
Yeah.
So I think we were always hoping and looking for those opportunities to present themselves. But it wasn't until, again, that morning, I imagined what the scene could be. And then I thought, what can we do? Is there something we can do with this scene? Right. And then it got there and it just like seemed obvious, like, oh, I can just crawl.
Which goes back to your point of like just kind of figuring it out on the day.
Yeah. It's so fun.
He's a good kid, basically. Yeah. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
I always
a horny kid.
Yeah.
But that's also research. I mean, they just said the research that I read was that he was very passionate but selfish. Okay, yeah. And so this is how I interpreted
Not a lover.
Yeah.
Not a lover.
One thing I find interesting about acting are the little details about a character, the way you carry yourself, maybe the way a character breathes, the way a character delivers dialogue, the facial expressions. But then sometimes a thing like a hat can give you so much access to somebody. And I find that fascinating because throughout the film, I mean, I hope you don't find this as a joke. I think the hat's almost like a leading character in the film in a way. Speaking of the playfulness, when he goes back to get it at one point or whatever. But when you have something like that as an actor, what access does that give you into the person? And do you view the hat almost like a character in that way, like I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly all of the costumes were really important. He's interesting because he was very aware of presentation, and he thought that it was important to present a certain image to the people. But he was very simple. Like, his preference was to dress very simply. So he would dress simply in his private life, but he would say, when in public, you should be magnificent. But what he would do is he wanted to be like just in his military uniform, like all the time. Mm-hmm. And so he would make his marshals dress up. He designed clothes. Like, when he became first consul, like the first thing he did was make like these really extravagant costumes for his marshals. But he just wanted to remain in his military uniform. But his hat was like, and you're right, that it, like, to him, it was like his best friend. And he said, he was very private about his strategy. And he said, I would never tell my plans to my hat, which is saying I wouldn't tell my best friend even my plans. Like, so there was something about his hat that he just absolutely loved. It was a really big part of him, but I think that you're right, that it was like this leading character to him. It was his best friend.
That's really, which adds more weight to the moment where the hat gets shot. Like, yeah, so many more layers.
Like, the hat just got it. Yeah. What just happened?
There aren't that many directors in your filmography that you've worked with more than once. Obviously, we can now add Sir Ridley to it, but you have M. Night Shyamalan and Paul Thomas Anderson, obviously Todd Phillips now. I'm sort of curious, what does a director have to have? Like, do they have a through line, a constant that all of them, some sort of trait that makes you go, if a director has this, I'll work with them again?
They have to ask me again.
That's it? That's the bare minimum?
Ask me.
We want you back on the show, we'll just ask him again.
I was thinking, like, Ridley's made like 23 movies or some shit since I worked with him, and they've been there. Like, the characters in his film have just been like heroic and great people, and then he's got like this petite, petulant tyrant. He goes, I got the guy for this.
Finally time.
Whack. You got 7 hours to make a decision. It's you, I'm giving it to someone else. What do you want to do? But no, I mean, Ridley is honestly, if you work in the business, I think really in any capacity, and Ridley calls you and wants you to participate in a project with them, you just fucking do it. I adore him. And when we first worked together on Gladiator, you know, I was so green. I'd you know, obviously been acting since I was a kid. I'd never been a part of like a major production. And when I arrived on set for Gladiator, I mean, honestly, I was like so sick. I was shaking. I couldn't believe the size of the location and just how many trucks there were. And I was fucking terrified, like really, truly terrified. And I couldn't do it. I mean, the first scene, I was literally visibly shaking, and I couldn't get through the dialogue. My voice was like quivering. And he was just take after take after take. And I can't remember how many takes we did. Just, I mean, for hours, right? And at the end, I've told the story before, but I'm telling you again just to illustrate. But at the end of the movie, he said, "Do you know that I didn't have any film in the camera until like the last 5 takes?" And he basically was just going, like, he knew that it wouldn't be helpful to me to just say, like, let's rehearse it. He had to make me feel as if we were actually filming. And he was asking the crew to keep doing this shot over and over, but he knew it was the only way for me to like get to this place of feeling comfortable. And I was so amazed by that. And it was really smart. He kind of figured me out. It was the only way to like get me to be comfortable. And then from that moment on, I really felt, you know, he did a thing that's really important that a director should do, especially with a young actor, is to empower them. Like, if you feel that they have an understanding of the character and an emotional intelligence, then you empower them to kind of find something and help be a part of that creativity. And he did that for me and really encouraged me to define that character. And so I've always remembered working with him fondly, particularly as I got older and I realized what was at stake. That was at stake for him personally as a director, the size of that film. You know, Russell, while everybody knew he was a movie star, I don't think he that was the movie that really made him bankable, right? So he really taken on all these risks, I mean, getting Russell, but really hiring me and Connie Nielsen, I think were, you know, two casting choices that probably weren't, you know, popular at the time. And he really risked so much. And so looking back, like, wow, I appreciated him at the time, but like a kid that doesn't know what the fuck is at stake, but is just having a good time. And as I got older, I realized what he did. And I have such appreciation and respect for him. So the opportunity to work with him again, and I know that he can pivot this massive production. If you're on set, if you knew the size of this, it's like this little village. And we would arrive some days. I remember arriving to shoot the coup. And originally the way that he designed it, he'd set up all of these shots, and then we started talking about, looking at the research and talking about the scene, and suddenly he just goes, "Wait a minute." I was like, "What if we start in this room?" And then he suddenly has just like completely switched the blocking, and we started in one room, come into the main room, and then I was like, and the soldiers are outside, and then we go outside, and he just like set up 8 cameras in 3 different rooms. And so we shot the entire thing. I mean, it was like a 7-minute sequence or something, all just like in one take. There were multiple cameras, but in one. And I sat there after it. I said, I just don't know how somebody does that and pivots so quickly and on such a massive scale. Mm-hmm. So, if you work in film, if you get the opportunity to work with Ridley Scott, you'd fucking take it.
Yeah. He hasn't asked us.
Before they're kicking us out, we have to ask about the scene on the stairs, where you come running and go falling down the stairs. It was one take, essentially, coming across. Is it intentional? Was it planned? Is it something that happened?
The fall?
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Well, I had planned it.
It happens in a wonder.
But planned, my hope was to fall down the stairs because that's what happened.
Sure.
But I didn't really know how that was going to happen. We didn't work with stunts to figure something out. And in fact, because they, understandably they wanted to do it in like a separate take in a separate piece. But I told the cameraman, I said, just, I may go down. I didn't know, right? I didn't want to do a fake trip. So I said, look, we'll go down and maybe it'll happen or not, and be prepared. But I think it's still like the camera slightly does, but doesn't quite catch it, right? It's not.
You fall out of frame.
Yeah.
It
and
looks so good that it made me pause and go like, "Did you mean to fucking do that?"
Yeah.
like that's which is a testament to.
Yeah, but it certainly didn't. I didn't like plant my right foot and turn it. Like I just jumped, and luckily, it's like I went right, skidded down. Yeah, that was just luck, and that was a great. I think part of it is because it's all this part of this sequence. You're not thinking about this one moment, right? Mm-hmm. I spent most of the time just going, what the fuck am I going to say when I'm up here? I'm screaming, and what am I saying? I was kind of using a bunch of different bits of dialogue that I had, and then these guys are pulling me off. Am I going over the rail? Am I going through it? I don't really know because we haven't figured it out. So there's so many things that are happening that you're not just thinking about like am I going to fall in this moment? And so then it just feels like alive and kinetic and out of your control, which it should be.
Yeah, definitely. The 11 cameras real quick on the action sequences, when you actually step in to do those scenes and you have people dressed up in uniforms carrying cameras, how does that affect you as an actor, knowing that there are people dressed in uniforms carrying cameras in an action scene?
Don't even think about them.
Wow.
I mean, I think that's why it's genius what really does, because honestly, it might have even been like after shooting the sequence, looking at the monitors with Ridley and going, how you have that close up? How's the camera right there? Because we had 50 extras or something, right? And I come in and screaming, and they're pulling me off of this raised platform. Your adrenaline starts racing, right? It's like part of your brain thinks that it's really happening, right? So this adrenaline starts going, and I don't think that I was really aware of some of those cameras.
Wow, that's incredible.
Dude, this is always a big deal for us. So seriously, thank you for taking the time, man. We appreciate you. Thank you for always being so cool, dude. Seriously, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You guys look sharp. Ridley's going to appreciate that.
Oh, we appreciate it.
And we are back for the second time this week, Jake. You and I were back from an amazing interview, this time Joaquin Phoenix. I love that interview. I think you guys crushed it. I think he crushed it. Thank you all for listening. Sorry there was no video. That's just sometimes people don't want to be on video, and that just is what it is.
It's fine.
Your guarantee, I said, we'll take it. That's fine.
Yeah. if the options are Joaquin no video or no Joaquin, you take Joaquin no video.
Yeah, I'll just take it. I'll take it. So thank you, folks.
Again, here's what I can honestly tell you.
Listening.
He looked great. Like, he looked happy. He looked healthy. We know Rooney was there. We saw Rooney at the premiere.
Nice.
His family was able to travel with him. He looks like he's doing great. And I can honestly, genuinely tell you, he smiled a lot in the interview.
You could hear it through the audio. It felt like a really good hang. And I had time for you in the room leaving that. Did you get him before? You had him before. Ridley.
No, here's the thing. And I don't know how much of the behind the scenes I'm going to bring. Well, I'll just go ahead and tell you.
Sure.
We were given permission by Joaquin's team, and we didn't know this at the time, to keep the interview going, because Joaquin was having a good time. We were told after that Joaquin's team said, just keep it going.
Beautiful.
And the only reason that they wrapped us was because, and this is just the most champagne of problems that you could possibly have, the only reason we got wrapped when we did, because who knows? I mean, we all had 10,000 more questions. Was because Ridley Scott was waiting for us in the next room.
That's fantastic.
So we literally got pulled out of one room and thrown in the other.
You were the prima donnas with the heart.
That's exactly right. We had the heart out. Ridley was ready to go. Ridley,
that's awesome.
And he was in a great mood. He was in great spirits. And it's so funny because we knew going into Paris that we were going to get him for the podcast, but that he wasn't going to do any on-camera stuff at the premiere. Like they said, they let it be known, like, hey, heads up, he's going to show up at the premiere, and he's going to stand for the cast photo, and then he's going to go. And we all knew that. And I was so bummed to see so many of the headlines coming out of the premiere of, like, first premiere since actor strike, Joaquin burns all reporters, walks by them. And I just kind of wanted to be like, no, he didn't. He talked to all of us earlier in the day, and that was the agreement.
Yeah.
And we all went into, it's not like we were all like, and no one, everyone had their microphones down when Joaquin was walking. No one was expecting it. So I would just like to sort of say on the record that, like, Joaquin didn't burn anybody. He, in fact, actually, at the actual junket itself, he added people to his schedule. There were people who went into that junket who weren't expecting to get him and got thrown in. And at the end of the day, they were ecstatically happy. So I would like to just sort of add for context that no, Joaquin Phoenix did not burn anybody at the premiere. He did not walk by and screw anybody over. He was very kind. He was very giving with his time. He gave us more time than we were supposed to get. And like I said, added plenty of reporters to his schedule. So that is the image of Joaquin that I would like to be out there.
I love that. And these two interviews, there's always times where, like, a director actor pairing in an interview, I'm like, oh, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
And given sort of the, not opposite, but just sort of like the difference, the juxtaposition in nature of maybe Ridley's energy and Joaquin's energy, maybe, especially at the start of an interview. Mm-hmm. I would love if we had the opportunity to sit down with them paired in person, like a Q&A after a screening or something. for the type of interaction where like, sure, we're there to ask questions, but a lot of it is like, I just want to sit back and hear them tell their stories.
Well, because also too, you know, when you have two people of very different energies, you always get curious in regards to like whose energy is going to affect who. You always worry like, is the person with the lesser energy going to bring the higher energy person down? But here's what I can say is that Ridley doesn't seem like the type of person who lets anyone affect his energy.
Right.
And I really do think that Joaquin has a lot of love and respect for Ridley Scott. So it wouldn't surprise me if Joaquin lifted, not that he needed to, because I think his energy was great in our interview, but like if he even lifted himself up a little bit to match Ridley's energy. That I agree with you. I before we sort of knew how everything was going to shake out with this junket, there was a part of me that sort of went, you know, if they paired Joaquin and Ridley, I wouldn't be mad about it. Like I'd actually kind of love to, because then it just opens you up to so many Gladiator questions. And
I bet that's why they don't do it.
Because it just ends up being but they're the ones that bring up Gladiator. Like they're the ones, you know, they'll be the first ones that, you know.
Well, you know, we should just, if folks are willing to sit in a theater for 5 hours, we should just go ahead and get a screening of the director's cut and then sit down with them afterwards. That's what we'll do. Let's just do that, Jake.
Done.
What do you
Done.
think? Done. Any final thoughts before I wrap us up? If you wanted to hear the review of this, like I said, if for some reason you missed our Ridley Scott interview, check out that episode with Ridley. At the end of that, Jake gives us a wonderful review of the film. I'll give you the cliff notes. He enjoyed a lot of it, and you should definitely see it. But Jake, any final thoughts about Joaquin, about Napoleon before we sign off?
Yeah, I guess I just want to end by saying it's specifically because Kevin and Sean couldn't be here that so many of the best aspects of the two interviews are yield from questions that they asked. And I feel bad sort of being the person on these two episodes who's kind of the face of this whole experience, because I was just a very small part at what was a group ReelBlend effort. Gabe on the ground doing a lot of the legwork, getting things, all the logistics figured out for us. And so by no means is me sort of telling all the stories meant to make this seem like it was the Jake show, because some of the best stuff that we got were answers to Kevin's and Sean's questions.
I second that completely. And I don't remember if I said that at the top of this episode or the end of the last one. But we should have time before the end of the year. You know, we usually have time for a little, some episodes where we can kind of look back and talk about the year. And I think that'll be a great time for us to pick up with them. Like, hopefully by the time you're listening to this, Sean is feeling good. And Kevin is good. It's just a scheduling issue. But yeah, hopefully we'll have time to come back where the four of us can really dissect it a little bit more, as well as some of the stuff that we've done this year, because it's been a crazy year. And you alluded to this earlier. We still have, the year's not over yet, and there's still a lot of stuff. And
there are a lot of big names for movies that haven't come out yet and have come out yet and maybe are making second and third rounds.
Yeah, and the award season's just getting started too. So 2024 isn't.
Yeah, obviously, just because we don't get it by December 31st doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah, this is true. Well, thank you all for listening. If you're in the U.S. and you celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday, happy holidays to you. I hope you had a good time with family. Hope you're still enjoying some family. Hoping you haven't been stampeded at a Walmart or something. You know, just buy stuff online.
And if you are, feel free to come back in a year as a serial killer.
There you go. Hey, Thanksgiving. Yes, thank you all for listening. Enjoy your weekends. We will be back next week. Do I know how or what? No. I never know.
No. Look, we gave you 2 episodes this week. What do you want?
Yes.
We're tired.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you all. What do we sign this one off with? Thanksgiving.